So today I'm having my first handling session with Turbo. He is a 3-year-old wild stallion out of the Kaimanawa ranges, fresh from the muster 4 days ago. And this is his very first time been worked with. So the energy in the yards this year is very, very different to previous years. I couldn't have been this close to my stallion last year without sending them into a panic. So for that reason, I'm able to advance a lot quicker than I would with a more wild stallion. This guy, being younger, is pretty relaxed, but also we've got older ones in these yards that are just incredible natured. It's just very, very unusual this year to have so many easygoing stallions, so it's really exciting. This guy has just got a really cool, quiet demeanour. Today I'm going to work and see if I can just develop a little bit of draw, and if a horse is really shut down or worried or fearful, that draw can literally just be a flick of the ear in my direction, even rolling the eye in my direction. And then it progresses. Once they can acknowledge you with the ear and the eye, then it becomes, I'm looking for an answer where they can start to tip their head in my direction, then their head and their neck in my direction, and then finally face up. Once they can face, then you can start teaching the draw, the actual draw, which is where they can move into your space, and you can kind of control their front end and hindquarters as you move around the yard. So last year with Porthos, the grey stallion I worked with, he took a long time to develop draw because he was such a timid, nervous horse, and he had quite a strong freeze response, so he would go inward. So I had to be very, very patient and quietly wait for him to be able to acknowledge me. This guy's already acknowledging me, so I'm hoping that I can get him to face up today, which is a lot to ask in a first session, but because he's quite advanced and quite relaxed, I'm hoping it will be possible, but if not, I'll just look for an ear or an eye in my direction. So basically at the moment he's on the rail, and I don't want to work him on the rail because then he's got no ability to run, and then he feels trapped and he's most likely going to go into a freeze response. He could also go into a fight response. He gives me the vibe that he's not exactly a fighting type of a stallion. Some of them give you very strong vibes. They start to posture towards you, they swell up, and this guy's giving me none of that body language, so I imagine he'd just be a freezer. And so these horses, the freezer horses that naturally go into a freeze response, are the easiest to tame because you can just keep pushing and putting pressure on them, but in the long run it does a lot of damage to the horse. They become very shut down, so I never want to train them in the freeze response or the fight or flight. We want to keep them really relaxed and open-minded. So he's already looking at me now, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance in the second. Good job. He checked me out with his ear, his eye, and he tipped his nose very slightly towards me. So that's the very beginning stages of a draw. As soon as he does that, brings his energy towards me, I hop back and retreat. So I walk slightly in, there. Good, that was a really big one. And I just turn my body side on, and that's me saying, dropping all my intention, saying questions, finished, you can just relax. The second I bring my body straight to him, good boy, good. If he looks away, I'll just quietly retreat, I'll quietly advance, there. He's starting to bring his energy round towards me. If I was putting pressure on and he was going into a flight response, so he's running and taking off around the yard, I've put way too much pressure on him. I've missed really important body language cues that he's getting tense. So I'm trying to avoid him needing to go into the fight, flight or freeze. So I'm going to quietly advance there. He just pushed his muscles out through his chest, which was a pre-indicator that he was about to take a step forward. He's had a nice lick and chew there, so I'll just wait a second. And now I'm going to quietly, once he's finished scratching his lip, good boy. This is crazy, just is such a neat atmosphere in these yards with how quiet everything is. So I'm just going to quietly advance there. And I'm trying to step back before he's actually even moved in my direction. I can tell from his ears and his eyes and the way his energy moves towards me that he's about to move, so I'll advance, and often I'll hop back before it's visibly obvious in some people's eyes that he's given me the answer I want. This is a really good response here with the yawning. So we call these catharsises. I don't know if that's a plural word, but anyway, it's where they have an emotional release. So lipping, yawning, eye rolling, shaking the neck or head, rubbing their legs is all a very important catharsis. It's where the brain is processing, it's going through a release process, and so we don't want to go in there while they're doing that and interrupt that, because it's a really important part of the training that we do. All right, now I'm going to advance there. So I only needed to take a step forward, come back, drop my energy. He's, I would say, very close to drawing in, just by the way his demeanour is very soft. He's starting to bring his forehand towards me just slightly. Good. Now what I'm going to do is, even though he's answered, so I've set up a few questions, he's answered them really well, now I'm going to expand the question. So I'm going to keep walking in, he's going to give me the right answer there, I'm not going to retreat there until he gives me a slightly bigger answer than the time before. So there's a little moment of confusion for the horse there, because they say, but I've given you the right answer and you haven't stopped and you haven't backed off. And that's when they usually try a little harder to communicate, and with that extra try, gives a bigger answer, and then I reward it. So I'm going to walk in, he's given me a good answer there, good man. So I kept the pressure on just a fraction longer. I'm going to turn my body away and reward him. Yeah, so by evolving the question, keeping a little bit of pressure on for a little bit longer, I get a slightly bigger answer. So quietly walk in, good. And then once I've asked and I've had that big amount of pressure and that big question, I go back to small questions again, and I quietly rebuild the confidence, because with that little bit of pressure, good boy, with that little bit of pressure on, it can overwhelm them, even though it's only a little bit. So he's trying to be really brave, he's approaching, but then you can see he needs a bit of time to himself. So I'm going to walk in, there, he's already starting. So this is where I start with a small question again, and I'll just take him looking in my direction. That was beautiful. He leaned his whole body onto his right front leg as if he was about to turn. I could have kept pushing, and I know he would have turned towards me. This is how relaxed he is. But once I've asked one big question, I like to go back and do lots of, well, not lots, but a few smaller questions to build up the confidence. And so now I'm going to approach. He's got his ear on me, so he's kind of giving me a small answer. I want a bigger answer. Stop. So he actually did just go into a slight fight response. So that's what we call posturing. But he's also very respectful. I just asked him to stop, he stopped. So the issue would be is if he postured at me and I jump backwards, then he learns, quickly establishes dominance over me. So I just pressure, but I have to ask smaller questions now, because if he's gone into a fight, he's feeling slightly overwhelmed and he's hiding. I'll take a tiny answer. I'm not going to advance because he's gone into a survival response there. And I'll reward that, even though it was a split-second answer. Good boy. Approach. Good boy. And this is why I like to go back into small questions. Approach. I don't need to go any closer. I'm about to send him into a fight, flight, freeze response. I'm going to wait there, and his ear just cocked on me. Man, So he learns that he can control me with his eyes, with his body. Whenever he faces towards me and advances, good boy. I'll hop back and give him space. I'm not going to go any closer to him right now. I'm about to push him into the survival response. There. So I'd quietly walk in until he starts to answer the question, but if I slip him into a survival response where he starts to, you can see him freeze up, and I keep advancing, then he's going to go into a really strong fight, flight or freeze. There, nice answer. So I'm just doing lots of little foundational tools. He's had a nice little lick of the lips there. Good man. He's bringing his energy towards me. I think he's wanting to scratch his legs. Boy. So quietly there. Nice. Good, I'll take that. So it's quite slow work to begin with, but every time I advance and retreat, I'm just solidifying the foundations a little bit more. So if you do the fast work, the slow work first, then the rest is fast. But if you go fast at the beginning, you have a lot of stuff you have to undo. Good boy, I really like that. So he really pushed his energy, his body towards me. I'm going to keep pressure here. I'm going to ask for a bigger question now. I'll probably get a slight posture from him. Good, that was nice. I'll take that. I was wanting more, but that's good. And sometimes if he's done a really good answer, I'll really hop back. Other times if he's given me a small answer, I'll just rock back to my back foot or take an extra step or two backwards, depending on how much pressure was applied. So pressure here, good. But I do want to draw him out of that corner. Good, there we go. And now that was a really good answer. He's faced in. Even though he's turned around, I'll leave it. I'm going to keep my back to him for a moment, which means all pressure is off. And I'm just going to let him check me out for a little bit. And now I'm going to go back in. Good boy. So even though I've got my back turned to him, I can still check behind me and make sure that he's not doing something he shouldn't be doing, like charging me. Now he's just checking me out, so I'm just going to stand here. And the fact that he's comfortable to stay facing me and eat is great. I'm actually going to step further across the round yard. I'll give him a real big break. Well, not a real big break, but take more pressure off him. And I'm going to come around towards his hindquarters this way and just approach him on a slightly different angle. So pressure here. The pressure is me. He's watching me. There. I didn't need to advance any further because I could see he was thinking about it. Pressure on. There. Good man. Nice. And he started to do a hindquarter yield, which is great. That's when we really get the beginning of a good draw. And I'm actually aiming up his hindquarters at the moment, which will help. Good boy. I'm actually not going to turn away this time because he wants to check me out. But my energy is very low. Good boy. That was such a good response. I'm going to give him a break, step out across the yard. I'll go back in on one more time on the other hip. See if I can get a similar response with him a little bit off the rail. Doesn't matter too much, but I never want to have them trapped. And then that's enough of a session. So I'm going to walk in. If he gives me a particularly good man, so there I break the step, get the question small again. So good boy, he's coming towards, giving me a very slight warning. Good boy. So with these horses, they start off pretty polite in how they tell you that they need more space or that they're a little bit overwhelmed. If you ignore that or you move in too quick and they don't have time to warn you, that's when you can get a full-blown charge. Good boy. So there, I'll take all pressure off. That was a really nice answer. I'm going to let him check me out as long as he wants, and then I'm going to just go chill out, pick him some grass. That in itself is a pretty short session, but if you do, I might do that 2 or 3 times a day. I might do it once a day. I don't like to do too much with them. It's literally this boring. It's not boring, I quite enjoy it, but it's just, we're just doing foundational work, and then because I'm already teaching him to draw, so if I walk into his hip here, I'll keep walking in. Good. Once I put the halter on him, good. Once I put the halter on, there we go. The leading is just second nature because you've built the foundations. The leading is messy if you haven't taught any of this, then suddenly you put a halter and lead rope on and then pull them around and then they're rearing and running off on you. But if you imagine here, if I've got a lead rope on him, good. Good boy. I did say I was going to finish, hold on. Good, so there you've got the beginning. Whoa, nope, no. That's a lot. So they do test you out a little bit as well. Good, and whoa. Good boy. Well done, and that's just him being overwhelmed as well. In a very foreign environment with a human being, which he wouldn't have seen much of. But this is actually very polite and very good. He's processing. I'll go in 1 or 2 more times now just to make sure he's finished. Good. Good boy. Good boy. Up in there. Perfect. Oh, I just want him to stay right there and to take me in as much as he can. So I didn't think he'd show much fight response, but he does, which is good. I like them to be a little bit challenging, and that is very natural. Most of them have it to some degree, and it's not them being aggressive, and it shouldn't be told off, unless of course he keeps coming beyond, and then you've got to, for your safety, you've got to get him out. But it's just him being a little bit scared, and he's trying to go into a fight response to protect himself. But our job as trainers is to show them that there's nothing to be afraid of, to redirect the energy, give them tools to help work through it, and then we'll have ourselves a very, very cool little pony. Good boy. And he's starting to lower his head. Slow blink, slow breathe, which is all real good signs of going into a relaxation, and this is the perfect time now for him to process. I'm going to hop back and give him a bit of space, and you should see, sometimes it can take a few minutes, so it gets a bit boring to watch, but you should see him start to drop his head, slow blink, slow breathe, maybe lick the lips, usually licking the lips, and often yawning. So if we, just for curiosity's sake, especially after they've had a wee bit of tension, and there's always tension involved when there's pressure involved, the pressure was me approaching. So if you watch him, this is the most important part of the training aspect. See, he's taking those really long, slow breaths. His sides are really heaving. Unless something from the outside interrupts him, he should. There, his eyes have started to close and slow blink. And they almost look like they're drugged. So I'm gonna keep filming, just to show you what a real deep catharsis looks like. And this is just where he's processing, he's changing those neural pathways in the brain, he's sort of making sense of what he's just experienced. And I'm going to hop back and give them even more space. So the more space you can give them, the better when they're going through this state, because they need the safety to be able to let down. But we'll just keep filming and see what he does. So you can see it looks like he's going to sleep. So in a really deep catharsis, they often look like they're just completely zonked out. I'm going to fast forward this bit so it doesn't matter if I speak, but he's cute. Really polite though, like, Ian. And then I'm like, stop. And he's like, oh, sorry. Yeah. Except Drifter was like, was it? Okay, keep filming. Follow him. So there he's just let down. And that probably isn't the extent of it. He probably wants to do a bit more. But I'll leave him alone now and then give him another session later on. And it'll literally be the same thing until he can start to get the draw without feeling the need to posture so much. But most of them do posture.